So at this stage, you've graduated with an English literature, which your family's, I'm sure, furious about, or they at least don't understand it. Cricket captain, you got them the raise and everything, and then what do you do? What did you decide to do?
Well, actually, it was a fortunate situation was that my father had gotten a job at the World's Fair in New York. And he was here, and then he decided on his own, he said that I should apply in New York for higher education. So he sent me the forms. In fact, he had filled it in because the last thing I was thinking of was coming to America. It was almost unimaginable to think of it. At most, some people may have ventured to go to Europe, but America was far. So my father, he sent me the applications, and I filled them in. And I do not know why, but I got admissions both at Columbia and NYU. And now the challenge was I had to give a test called the Graduate Business Admissions Test, and it was held in Bombay, Mumbai now. And I had only 3 days or 4 days to get there. And, you know, when something has to happen, luck goes your way. It was almost impossible. Those days, Indian Airlines flights used to come to Kashmir. Yeah. And in the summer, it was summertime or early spring, the pilots made the decision whether the passes were clear for them to go back. I don't think they had all the modern equipment.
They didn't have the
And many times the pilots coming from the planes, coming to Kashmir, would decide that the passes were not open to go back because they wanted to stay in Kashmir. So the first day we went there, the pilots said,
no flight.
No flight. The second day, now if I had missed the second day, I would not have been able to give the exam and not come to America. And went to the airport, and they at that time used to give you a big 4 or 5 course lunch at the airport. But the planes were small, so the lunch was given at the airport. And the first day we had gone, they had given us this 5-course meal and they sent us home.
They sent you home.
Second day we had a big meal, and they again said, sorry, the pilot says the pass is the Banihal pass.
Yeah.
They said the pass is cloudy.
Yeah.
I said, it's not going, this is great, a big problem. So I looked for the pilot, saw him, and said, you have to go. And give the he first said, you know, this closed. I said, look at it again. And I said, I'm not going to let you go unless you really see to it that the pass is open. And I must have really sort of convinced him. A few minutes later, he announced, he said, oh, you know, the passes are open and we're going to go.
You've been a persuasive person right from the beginning.
Well, you know, sort of, it sometimes comes natural.
Yeah, it does.
Right.
So now you're in Bombay, but you were able to obviously qualify the test.
I did.
How was New York like?
Well, it's
Very
coming
different,
from
obviously,
Kashmir to New York is like coming from a different planet. And I've had 2 experiences which I recall. One was the New York subway system. Second day I had to go into the subway system. Now in Kashmir, when you went underground, you only went that you're not going to come back. That's the only time you went underground.
Took me a while, but I get it.
Yeah, that's the only time you used to go there. And they said you're going to go underground. It was a shock. And there's noise, but, you know, like everything else in this world, you get used to it. And I also observed something. I realized, looked at the people, and I said, you know, there are people like everywhere else. Because I had no idea what Americans were. How should one react to them? The only time I've seen about America was in movies, cowboy movies, and classics, you know, those comics. That was it when we were growing up.
Right.
No other idea. But here, when I looked around, I said, they're not much different. I said, yes, it's okay. It's not going to be a problem.
I'll be fine.
I will be fine. The second thing is, you know, you learned, I had no idea. For instance, I went to have some food. No idea what to eat because, you know, it's all different foods. So I went to this, it used to be an automat, so at least you could go there and see, and I asked for tea. So they gave me this mug of water and a couple of bags. So I went to the table, so I looked at the bag and determined that it must have tea in it, so I started opening the tea bag to put the tea inside the water, and there was somebody sitting next to me. He said, you don't do that. You put the whole bag in. So I said, I was a little bit strange to put something that looked like paper into water. The bag, I did. Then I looked at the sugar. I looked at this and I said, it must have sugar inside. And I was thinking, should I open it and not open it? And came to the conclusion I must put that in
Dip
too.
it in.
And so this other person, of course, had explained to me small things.
Yeah.
But you remember those first impressions.
Yeah.
So the subway and the tea bag is what I remember.
It never left you after all these years.
It hasn't.
How was school? Very different than a Pathshala or Gurukul in India.
I decided to go to NYU, not Columbia, because the school was at night. It was evening classes because I had to work during the days.
To pay the bills.
I had to pay the bills. My father had after I came, he was here, but then he went back. But he did an amazing thing. He got me to America.
Yeah.
Without him, I would not be in America. So at NYU, I had to work, and my first job was in Queens, in some factory. Now, came from Kashmir, as you know, well-to-do families, and I was working, playing sports and all that. Now I had to work in this factory, and even today I don't remember what they did. So I was given a job to work for the supervisor, and after about 2 or 3 weeks, he called me in one day, Friday, and he gives me the check, and he says, with a great smile, he says, don't come in on Monday. So I said, okay, I'll see you on Tuesday. He said, no, on Tuesday. So it took me the first time to realize that I was being fired. And I was.
And you never knew why?
No, I did not. I never knew why. I didn't understand what I was supposed to do. And I still don't even remember what this factory made. But anyway, my second job was a much better job. It was Canal Street, working in a printing press. And it was great people. And I learned more about business. I learned bookkeeping, accounting, working on the print shop. There were only 4 or 5 people working there.
How long was the gap between your being fired from the first job after a few days and the next job?
I would say maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
How were those 2-3 weeks? You had no job, no money, dad was gone.
Well, it must have been tough. I don't remember now, but it must have been tough, yes. And years later, this man who I worked for, and he said, you should really be working on Wall Street. Because our New York University School of Business used to be near Wall Street, actually opposite it. So after some time I agreed, and I went to Wall Street. It was the first building on Wall Street, is One Wall Street. And I walked up on every floor, and on the 16th floor, I got a job with Bear Stearns.
Are you serious? You knocked on just kept going up the floors till somebody said, we have a job?
Yes, I looked for a job. I asked him, I said, I'm looking for a job. And now on the 16th floor, I remember this person like yesterday. His name was Jacobs. I've met a million people, you forget the names, but Jacobs I remember. And he asked me about my activities, and he said, fill the form, application form, and said extracurricular activities. And I said, mountain climbing. I'm in Kashmir,
You climb mountains.
You climb mountains, it's a backyard. And he said, I love mountains. I'm a hiker. And we talked more about, he said, I've got to get you in. And he did. And so that was my first my second job, but I was still at NYU.
You were still studying?
I was still studying,
yeah. Wasn't the school very different though? The studying atmosphere, practices, teacher attention, one-on-one?
It was amazing. Now this was an evening school, and most of the students were people who were already working mostly in the financial community. So most of them were, to me, looked pretty old.
Yeah.
I was 20 years old, just turned 21. And these were all working, most of them were people who had jobs. They were doing an MBA at night. And some of them at that time were smoking in the classrooms, was allowed. Some of them were keeping their feet on the tables in Kashmir,
That would be sacrilegious.
Sacrilegious. And they would even tell the teacher, we think you're wrong. Now to think in Kashmir, to tell a teacher you're wrong.
Yeah, you wouldn't come home that night. That's it.
It would not be possible, yes.
Yeah.
But then I realized, these are the great things of America. The freedoms that you can speak up. You have a point of view.